So when do most PhD students realize that they're not stars in academia? And stars from meaning somebody that is becoming famous for what they actually do. And the only thing that I could speak to is my own experiences about how I dealt with things and coming to the conclusion. I had high aspirations. I sort of went through engineering school pretty well. It wasn't the top, but I was doing pretty well at a very good engineering school, the University of Waterloo. And then I was going through my PhD, and I thought I would do pretty well as well. And so I set my sights up, and I wanted to publish in very top journals. So I was always very keen on that right from the get-go. And when I realized that I likely wasn't going to be a star was probably about my second year in, when I started getting a lot of pushback in how I was handling things. And it was really just, I realized that this was a lot harder than I thought it was. And there's lots of incredibly smart people that you bump into. It's probably more along the lines of like my third year past comprehensive exams, because you don't really get a chance of working on your own. And I was really studious. I worked hard. I was probably a very good student in a lot of different ways. And I tried to manage, my intellect so I wouldn't necessarily burn out. Because I think having breaks and those kind of things are important. But I think is coming to the conclusion of running into, no matter what you actually do, no matter what you actually say, there was always somebody that was on the other side that would be critiquing it. And, their critiques were always right. So you run into this predicament of no matter what you choose, the critiques are always right, and they're always sharp, and they're always really smart. And you have to figure out how to manage this mentally. And it wasn't, to me, it was like very much after a while, and it's taken me a long time to develop this, is realizing that stars make me nervous. Because that generally means that they're not getting a lot of pushback in some sort of way. It generally means that they're not getting stretched. And, maybe they're not doing things that are as exciting as other people. And I think if you were to look at the people that are actually doing incredibly good work, they don't often look like stars. Right? Even if you were to look at there's a lot of Nobel laureates that do really well and publish a lot and look like stars, but there's also lots that don't publish a lot. And if you were to look at them at face value, you're like, ooh, they're not as publishing as you would think, but yet they're extraordinary because they change the trajectory of how things work. And it's coming to the conclusion that the way that we understand the world is often based on, so there's two ways to understand the world. And it's taken me a long time. In fact, some of my research is about this. It's taken me a long time. It's very contradictory, the sort of second logic that I'm going to say. But the first logic is about production. You sort of just publish things and, you do more of the same and you're producing widgets. And that is fantastic. And that's really, really helpful. But there's another perspective that I think is actually getting traction, based on some of the work that I've been doing, is essentially thinking about that there is a lot of rare events that happen and rare things that cannot be explained. They're very difficult to put together, and they kind of match up in weird, random ways that are never really obvious. And in fact, I think much of my field that studies performance is getting more and more persuaded by this perspective. I'm starting to see more people interested in the sort of idea of randomness and luck and things along the line that things just happen and you can't explain it very well. And I wish that there was a mechanism for why things actually happen, but and there may always be after the fact, but you can't forecast, you can't think about how those things will actually work out, right? It's like part of the reason why I'm not necessarily scared about artificial intelligence is because it does a really poor job. It's okay, but it does a kind of a poor job of connecting these kind of weird, crazy, random things that you would never see. And it often takes both incredible amount of insight and working with things and getting pushed back and bumping into things, but also, just working at things for a long time. This sort of combined aspect of production and as well as sort of randomness that happens. And that is very difficult to predict. It's very difficult to quantify. And it's often not very clear in terms of what this all means in terms of, productivity and in terms of being a star. One of the things that we know is that you can increase your probability of becoming a star by having the right people, getting the right education, those kind of things. But at the same time, there's not a great explanation beyond that allows you to get to that moment. And so a lot of people, including myself, that are kind of in the game, still going, I'm moving away from that. And I'm moving away from, I don't think anybody is really particularly a star more than anybody else. I think it is about realizing that you're good enough and your explanations and your thoughts are amazing no matter what happens. And that's in this world of, in the former world of productivity and getting things done, I think you can easily identify stars. But in this other world where there's lots of randomness, there's a lot of idiosyncratic things that happen, there is just a lot of interesting artifacts that pop up that never can be explained. So for example, a whole host of PhD researchers might have exited the market because of COVID, because it was just very, very difficult. And we have no real way to explain that in a good way. So if we take this other perspective, that a lot of randomness happens and everybody has a unique say, and their unique say is interesting, and we just have to capture it and figure out how to link to it and figure out how to have people feel good. I think it's a far different combination. It's a far different way of viewing the world. It's also a far different and more productive way to view a lot of the things that we go through, where we can resonate and say, you know what, that person's idea is incredible. They might have only had one or two incredible ideas, but they're incredible. And we have to look at them for that. Now, the problem is that I think people that are in the know, that are in the game, understand this. It's the rest of the world that you have to constantly be fighting against. And it's very difficult to do. And so the only thing that I can continuously say, don't lose hope. You're neither a star or not a star. Just keep taking steps forward and enjoying the process. And that's the only thing that you can hope for. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.